into strange archaeology. We want to begin with a very Thompson, and this is a textbook that's probably about 3 inches. I have this book and I've read most of it. They did a smaller version for the more lay public, but this was written to be taken seriously by archaeologists and anthropologists, where they sort of went through the fossil record and basically discovered that at the same time that Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens sapiens existed, there is evidence that Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and much earlier versions existed. And of course, in the traditional version of anthropology, you know, we started with Homo erectus, and we make our way through Australopithecus and Java man and Peking man, eventually coming to Neanderthal, then Cro-Magnon, then Homo sapien, then Homo sapien sapien. That's sort of the basic lineage. But we're discovering now, because of DNA testing, that there seem to actually be many branches off the tree, some of which seem to be separate from one another. In other words, there is just not an unbroken line. There are many different humanoids or hominids that we have existed on this planet. So I want to just show you some really amazing artifacts that begin to have us move our time clock backward. You know, according to anthropology, Homo sapiens came up around 200,000 years ago, and Homo sapiens sapiens about 40,000 years ago. So let's look at this. This figure on the left, this is a coin-like object from a well boring near Lawn Ridge, Illinois, that was reportedly found at a depth of 114 feet below the surface. According to information supplied by the Illinois State Geological Survey, the deposits containing the coin are between 200 and 400,000 years old. So let's think about that. Let's just say it was only 200,000 years. If Homo sapiens only began 200,000 years and we were really, you know, coming out of the jungle and swinging from the forest and just starting to make fire, who would have the arts of metallurgy to be able to make a coin, and who would have conceived of the concept of money to trade for barter 200 to 400,000 years ago? Over here, we have a metal tube found at Saint-Jean-le-Vey, France, in 65-million-year-old chalk bed. Now, what in the world is a metal tube that looks like it's used in some sort of either aqueduct system or machinery doing in 65-million-year-old chalk bed? So either there were much earlier, let us say, civilizations on this planet that have been destroyed and wiped away, or, you know, some ETs visited and threw their trash out. That's really kind of the only thing that we can, you know, come up with. So here's this one. This is a fossilized little guy that was about 3 or 4 feet tall. He was sitting in a yoga position. He was found in a cave in 1932 in San Pedro, Mexico. Actually, he's not 3 or 4 feet. He's 14 inches high. So, you know, this is about a foot. So 14 inches is going to be, he's only about this tall. So he's one of those little guys. Who knows, maybe he crash landed on this planet. He took a look in 1932, you know, or the late 1800s at the cowboys, okay, and Indians, and he said, I'm out of here. He went to a cave. He decided to meditate and leave his body. So this is pretty amazing. This is clearly not a normal human. This one's amazing. A metallic sphere found in South Africa with 3 parallel grooves around the equator. And there were quite a lot of these spheres that were found. This sphere was found in Precambrian mineral deposit that was said to be 2.8 billion years old. So again, it's the same conversation. Either there were earlier, let us say, incarnations of civilizations, humanoid on the planet that reached an ability to create machine board ball bearings in these spheres, or ETs came, visited the planet, looked around, dumped their trash out, and we've now found it in our own mineral deposits. So, you know, we can see something was going on the planet that is not the traditional version of reality that we've been taught. Now, this is an interesting one because it is said that at the time of Atlantis that humans were still interacting with some dinosaurs. They weren't all dead, although certainly, you know, most of them were believed to be killed about 65 million years ago when that asteroid hit the Yucatan. But in this one, a man is riding a triceratops. And if you remember, triceratops are herbivores, like the Brontosaurus rex. So they weren't carnivorous. They were, you know, probably friendly animals. So instead of riding your horse or your donkey or your mule or your cow, he was riding a triceratops. I find that to be extremely interesting. Look at the size of this footprint. This is one of many human footprints that have been found throughout the years. And this one is strata of rock, contemporary with the time of dinosaurs. And this one came from the dinosaur park near Glen Rose, Texas. The footprint exceeds 18 inches. Now, think about us. When we have, our feet, it's like a size 7 foot is 7 inches, 7.5, 8, 10 foot. A size 10 shoe is about a 10-inch foot. So 18 inches would mean that this being was very tall. And they think it was a woman's foot that stood approximately 10 feet tall and weighed. She probably wasn't a fat giant. She was probably actually normal. So strata were laid down during the first few days of Noah's flood when the water levels were low enough to allow daily tidal changes to form layers of mud so that the fleeing creatures could seek higher ground. The upper strata showed no prints. So this is amazing. So we think that the Great Flood happened about 11,500 years ago when Atlantis went down for the last time. So that's pretty extraordinary. Okay, let's look at this one. This is actually a hammer that was found in June of 1934 by the Hahn family, and they discovered a rock sitting on a ledge beside a waterfall outside of London, Texas. Inside, they found a hammer made of metal. They cut into one of the bevel sides with a metal file, and this site, archaeological site, consisted of 75 to 100 million year old Cretaceous rock. So there was no corrosion in the metal. It's actually been sent in to metallurgists to test. They found out that the density tests indicate that it was made of exceptional casting quality, and the iron was set in a central cross-sectional plane showing the interior of the metal to be very pure with no bubbles, which means it had to have been cast. It couldn't have been, found somewhere and broken away and stuck onto this piece of wood. The metallurgy was 96% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.74% sulfur with no carbon. So again, somebody was able to produce metallurgy in 100 million years ago. That's what that basically means. Now, these are more recent examples of metals, coins, in fact, that have been found in France and also longer ago in Rome. 1556 and 1547 coins, and they're very similar to Roman coins that were found around 200 or 197 AD. And you can see here, this looks like a pastoral countryside. Here's a man. He's standing there looking up at the sky at either the largest floating mushroom we've ever seen or something that's a UFO. Remember, this is before weather balloons. This is before airplanes. They didn't have things floating in the sky. They just had birds. That was in clouds. That was it. So this was obviously a remarkable enough occurrence that they literally minted a coin to commemorate this event. And here we have something similar. There's obviously a war going on. We see these spears that are pointed up, and again, some kind of big round extraterrestrial ship. And it's difficult to see what this is on top. If this is meant to be humans or people, I can't really make it out. But again, this is remarkable. It was obviously a very big occurrence, because then the royal families would have had to have agreed to have it carved out of wax and then created as a template for coins to commemorate this important event. This one I think is just extraordinary. This is a painting. I have tried to find the artist of this painting. The style is done in like the mid-17 to mid-1800s. But this is obviously a clipper ship with sails. We can see that very clearly. And here is clearly a UFO. And of course, they probably didn't call them UFOs. Who knows what they call them? Blazing shields, flying disc. This is a painting that goes back to 1710 by a painter that was depicting the shepherd's experience on the night of Jesus's birth. This is called the baptism of Christ. And this, we're not seeing the classic just angels with wings coming down. We're actually seeing what appears to be a round disc UFO shining a light down onto the ground. And there's a figure of light here, so I'm going to assume this is meant to be an angel, but we don't see any wings, do we? So whoever this guy was, he obviously knew something that is not generally known about the beings that were overseeing Jesus's birth. Here we have a similar thing. This is a picture of Mary, and we have John the Baptist, and we have Jesus here. And in the background, we have what appears to be a flying ship with a man. Now, you can see the ship here at a closer level, okay? And here's the man with his dog. Okay, and we even see it closer here. Here's the man. He's got his hand raised, and he and his dog are looking at the ship that's all shining in light. And, of course, this was laid in very, very subtly. Here's one from the 1400s. This is a gigantic tapestry. And hidden behind all of these women are either large flying top hats or, in fact, UFOs. And this is, of course, over the altar in Kosovo, Yugoslavia, at a monastery of all things. Unbelievable. This dates back to 1350 AD, the crucifixion. So we see a little dude here in a flying ship, and he's chasing this other little dude, and this is a little clear depiction of it, where this guy seems to be looking over his shoulder. Now, this symbol that is on the disc, on the flying craft itself, is a symbol of the Anunnaki gods that has literally 8 points, the cross with the intermediate points in between. That's a symbol that means the planet of the crossing. And here's Jesus, and this is where these little spaceships are. They're hidden behind the scenes. So that's quite extraordinary. This is another one that I love, the Miracle of the Snow. This is a medieval village. This was painted. This artist lived between the late 1300s and mid 1400s. And we see Jesus and Mary literally with a whole fleet of spaceships that are covered with cloud cover, which is quite extraordinary. So we know that there have been visitations from the past. We see this is actually an ancient a depiction and carving of an astronaut. And here's another one. Here are gold planes that were found in Bogota, Colombia. And of course, the archaeologists dismiss them as, flying bees or flying butterflies. This doesn't look like a butterfly, and it certainly doesn't look like a bee, but they just did not know how else to interpret it. Here we have a capsule. This is the blast off. There's the nose cone of the blast off. And if you could see this more clearly, there's actually a little dude inside here, much as we've sent astronauts into space since the 1960s and 70s. So UFOs, ETs, giants, little people, they've been with us a long time, and I just love this depiction. This artist captures it so beautifully. Even at the time of the dinosaurs, there were probably ships visiting our planet, checking to see whether or not it was a suitable planet for colonization, and it's quite possible that the destruction of the dinosaurs, because it was such a dominant species, was engineered by deliberately directing an asteroid onto the planet, which, as we know, created an extinction level event. And of course, eventually the planet did recover, and then the mammalian species, which includes, of course, humans and all the four-footed animals that we know and love out there, began to take ascendancy, and the reptiles kind of stepped backwards. And of course, there were some remnants of the reptiles, and we hear about them in the stories of the dragons, and I'm going to be showing you a video of a dragon before our time together is gone.